There's something that's becoming increasingly obvious about JD Vance every time he's put in front of a crowd without Donald Trump standing next to him. I'm going to play a clip for you. Here is JD speaking to the troops, and he tries to crack a joke at Joe Biden's expense, and nothing happens. Just silence. I have pocket lint with more charisma than this guy. Take a look at this, and then I want to talk about the struggle that JD Vance is up against.
It's amazing to be here. You know what I'm thinking as I'm coming down the steps is don't fall and bust your ass in front of all of you and in front of all these cameras, because they would never let me live that one down. You know, the previous president, I'm trying to be nonpartisan. You ever seen these old cartoons where you've got the angel on the shoulder and the devil on the shoulder?
No.
Well, because I'm speaking to all of you, our great patriots and service members, I've got the angel on my shoulder saying, JD, don't be partisan. We're going to make this nonpartisan. And then I've got the devil on my shoulder who wants to talk about every time that Joe Biden fell up or down the stairs. And the media didn't care about that. But if I did it one time, it would be a major, major story.
Wow. That punchline really landing with the force of a wet paper towel or something, right? And it reminded me of a conversation I had recently with some acquaintances that are sort of like pretty reliable Democratic voters. And when we talked about 2028 and the Republican primary, what struck me wasn't that they disliked JD Vance, which they did, and that's expected. I was very surprised by the contrast that this group of Democrats that I was talking to drew, where they said, we see Vance as a complete and total tool. He's trying too hard. He seems like he's auditioning for something all the time. But then they said something interesting, which is compared to Vance, Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State, feels pretty normal. Like, we don't agree with him politically, these friends said. Wouldn't go out there and say, I want Rubio to be the president. But if Rubio were to be the next president, he seems much more serious and competent and like an actual adult. And the feeling was sort of like, I would prefer it to be a Democrat because I'm a Democrat, but it wouldn't be a red alert moment if Marco Rubio became the next president of the United States the way it would if it were JD Vance. And my takeaway was, it's not that any of these people like Rubio, but it's that Vance, and of course Trump before him, like now and potentially before if it ultimately becomes JD as the nominee, Trump and Vance are so incompetent in a cartoonish way that we just wouldn't be worried if Rubio was the president in the way that we're so worried about the possibility that it could be JD Vance. And it's a really tough place for JD to be because VPs are usually kind of expected to spend 4 years building credibility and showing they could lead if it came down to it. And especially if they have presidential ambitions the way JD Vance does, giving voters a reason to imagine them as president. And what Vance is doing is the opposite. People see another clip and another clip and another clip, and they go, man, this guy can't possibly do it. He has no charisma, he has no gravitas, and he's just cringe in every way. Here's another clip. And again, the troops behind JD, they're just not into this crap.
One of the reasons why I wanted this job is because it's pretty cool to have the Commandant of the Marine Corps have to salute a member of the E4 Mafia. That's pretty cool.
Nobody is reacting to this crap.
Call it an ego thing. But I left the Marine Corps as an E4, as a corporal of Marines. It's some of the proudest things that I ever did. I did in the Marine Corps, and some of the best friends that I've ever made were in the Marine Corps, with Marines, with sailors, with all the people that I served with and had the pleasure to get to know.
Great speech, JD. Thank you.
But one of the things I learned in the United States Marine Corps, serving from 03 to 07, is that we sometimes had leaders who would ask you all to go to war, but would not give you a clear mission on the other end. And one of the reasons why I'm proudest of what the President of the United States has done over these last 18 months is because when he has asked you to go to war, he has given you a defined mission. He's asked you to go and accomplish it.
He has? That's not been my experience. He must have kept those missions a secret.
And most importantly, he's given you the tools to kick the hell out of the enemy and to come home safely. That is what you should expect of me, of our great secretary.
Anyway, as you can see, one of the least engaging speakers maybe ever seen in American politics. And every single speech feels so rehearsed. Nothing feels authentic. It all feels like even the jokes are focus group tested, but they've got the wrong people in the focus group because then the jokes never land. Quick timeout. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed. Not tomorrow, not later. Just do it right now. Let's get it done. We're closing in on 4 million subscribers. I would appreciate the help. Let's get back to where I was. And he has this habit of delivering the lines like he's expecting applause, but he hasn't earned any applause. And then when the applause doesn't show up, it gets awkward very quickly. Now, I think the bigger political problem for Vance is there was a period where it was just assumed like this guy's got the 28 nomination. If he wants it, it's his for the taking. He's the vice president. It's usually how this works. But with every passing week, I'm increasingly less and less convinced that that's the direction Trump wants this to go. He has never even shown much of an interest in creating a successor. He doesn't build independent stars. He builds people whose identities depend entirely on him. And if you start looking a little too ambitious or a little too independent, Trump eventually sees you as competition. And I'm increasingly convinced that Trump doesn't want his successor to do well. Trump wants a weak successor so that then when they lose or when they win and fail, Trump's ego is reinforced by the idea that, see, not just anyone can do it. The Republican Party, after I was gone, failed. Trump would love that for his ego. He doesn't care about helping the Republican Party once he's gone. And he certainly isn't spending time elevating JD Vance and rarely talks about him as the future. Increasingly is talking about Marco Rubio, in fact. And I don't think Trump wants to hand JD Vance the movement at all. Trump is the movement as far as he's concerned. The movement doesn't get inherited by anybody, maybe Don Jr. But if Trump disappeared tomorrow, JD Vance isn't even Trump but younger. He's Trump but younger with no charisma, no gravitas, and not even the ability to pretend to genuinely care about everybody else. So I think that people sense this guy has no charisma and no authenticity, and they can also sense imitation. Vance often comes across like he's doing an impression of what a MAGA leader is supposed to sound like, and Trump has a lot of flaws. You never feel like Trump's imitating anybody. And I think that's part of why Trump supporters have connected with him. And with Vance, it feels like you're watching someone try to pretend to be sort of Trump. And it's really difficult to pull that off. Number one, because Trump is still around. Number two, because audiences usually want to go to the real band. They're not going to go to the tribute band when the real band is still around. And three, because JD lacks charisma in such a painful way. I mean, Dan Quayle, which vice president has this acutely lacked charisma? Hard to think of one. And it's going to be a real interesting situation as this presidency winds down. Thanks for watching. Check out this other video. And if you like our content, make sure to subscribe so YouTube puts our videos in your feed, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple.